The moment Marcus Adams stepped into Director Vivian Porter's office, he knew something had shifted. The air felt charged with an unfamiliar tension as she motioned for him to close the door behind him. For 3 years, he had been the top-performing analyst at Helix Financial, his career trajectory nothing short of meteoric until Vivian's promotion 2 months ago. "Your quarterly review," she said, sliding a folder across her immaculate desk. Her crimson fingernails tapped an impatient rhythm on the polished mahogany. "I'm afraid it's not what you're accustomed to." Marcus felt his stomach drop as he scanned the document. Where his evaluations had always been stellar, now there were critical comments and a performance rating that had plummeted from exceptional to needs improvement. "This doesn't make sense," he said, fighting to keep his voice steady. "My numbers exceed every target. The Westbrook account alone brought in. The issues aren't with your numbers, Marcus." Vivian's smile didn't reach her eyes. "It's your teamwork, leadership qualities, executive presence." She leaned forward. "Qualities I need to see if you expect to keep your position on the executive track." Marcus knew instantly what was happening. 3 weeks ago, he had declined Vivian's invitation for drinks to discuss his future at her apartment. The subtext had been unmistakable, as was her cold fury when he'd politely suggested meeting at the office instead. "I understand." He didn't understand at all, but he recognized a power play when he saw one. "I'm glad. I'll need you to stay late this week to work on the Johnson proposal." She checked her watch. "Starting tonight." On his way out, Marcus passed Elena from HR, who gave him a sympathetic look that confirmed his suspicions. He wasn't the first to face Vivian's special brand of professional retribution. That evening, as the office emptied, Marcus found himself alone with Vivian in the conference room. She stood uncomfortably close as they reviewed documents, her hand occasionally brushing his. When she accidentally spilled water on his shirt and offered to help dry it, Marcus excused himself to the restroom. Standing before the mirror, dabbing at his shirt with paper towels, Marcus made a decision. Unlike the others who had quietly transferred departments or resigned rather than confront the situation, he wasn't going to let this continue. 20 years of hard work, starting from nothing, the scholarship to business school, the nights and weekends he'd sacrificed, he wasn't going to let anyone take that away, especially not through such blatant abuse of power. His phone buzzed, with a text from Vivian. "Waiting. Don't be long." Marcus took a deep breath. He knew the risks of challenging someone with Vivian's connections. His word against hers. Career suicide, potentially. But he also knew what was right. He pulled out his phone and opened the voice recorder app. If he was going to stand up to this, he needed evidence, he needed allies, he needed a plan. As he stepped back into the conference room where Vivian waited with a predatory smile, Marcus's mind was already mapping out the careful, methodical steps he would take. She thought she held all the power, but Marcus Adams had never backed down from a fight when the stakes mattered. "Sorry for the delay," he said pleasantly, setting his phone on the table, the recorder running silently. Now, where were we? 2 weeks passed. Each day, a carefully choreographed dance. Marcus documented everything. Inappropriate comments, unnecessary late-night meetings, tasks reassigned whenever he declined her personal invitations. He saved emails, recorded conversations when legally permissible, and kept a detailed journal. What he didn't expect was to discover he wasn't alone. "She's done this before," whispered Rachel Chen, a senior manager who'd been with Helix for 15 years. They were huddled in the corner of the company cafeteria, their conversation masked by the lunchtime bustle. "At her previous company. It was covered up, but I have a friend who worked there." Marcus nodded slowly. "How many others here?" "That I know of? 3 in the past 2 months. 2 transferred to satellite offices. Jason quit last week." Rachel's eyes darted nervously around the room. "Everyone's afraid to speak up. She's close with the CEO." "What if it wasn't just one person speaking up?" Marcus asked. That afternoon, Marcus received an email from Vivian requesting his presence at a working dinner to discuss his performance improvement plan. The implication was clear. His job was on the line. Later, in a coffee shop 6 blocks from the office, Marcus met with Rachel and 2 others, Michael from accounting and Taryn from the legal department. Each had their own story, variations on the same theme. "She's careful," Taryn explained. "Always makes sure there are no witnesses. Creates paper trails that make it look like performance issues. Classic predator behavior." "HR?" Michael suggested. "Weekly." "Elena's sympathetic but scared," Rachel replied. "Vivian's already pushed out one HR director who questioned her hiring practices." Marcus laid out his plan. "We need more evidence and we need to present a united front. If it's all of us together with documentation, it's still risky," Taryn cautioned. "Retaliation is real even with laws against it." "So is doing nothing," Marcus countered. "How many more people will go through this if no one stops her?" They agreed to gather more evidence and meet again in a week. But as Marcus returned to his apartment that night, he found Vivian waiting in the lobby. "Missed you at the office," she said smoothly. "I thought we had a dinner meeting." Marcus's heart pounded. "I had a personal emergency. I was about to email you." "Personal emergency?" Her eyebrow arched. "With Rachel Chen and Taryn Williams at Riverside Coffee?" Ice filled Marcus's veins. She'd had him followed. "Office politics is a dangerous game, Marcus." Her voice was soft, almost sympathetic. "Especially when you don't know who you're playing against. I'd hate to see someone with your potential throw everything away over misunderstandings." She stepped closer. "Your final project review is next week. I'm the deciding vote on whether you stay with the company." Her hand touched his arm. "I still think we could work wonderfully together. Think about it." As Vivian walked away, Marcus felt a mixture of rage and determination crystallize within him. She thought she had him cornered. She didn't realize he was just getting started. That night, unable to sleep, Marcus researched Vivian's previous employment history more thoroughly. What he found made his blood run cold and gave him an unexpected advantage. Before joining Helix, Vivian had worked at 3 companies in 7 years. Each departure coincided with personnel complaints that were subsequently buried. But records existed if you knew where to look. Marcus reached for his phone and dialed a number he rarely used. "Alex, it's Marcus Adams. I know it's late, but I need your investigative journalism skills. And I need absolute discretion." The corporate boardroom of Helix Financial fell silent as the elevator doors opened, and Marcus stepped out. 5 days had passed since Vivian's thinly veiled threat in his apartment lobby. 5 days of what felt like psychological warfare. His project files had mysteriously disappeared from the server. His team members had been reassigned. This morning, he'd received an email about a disciplinary hearing scheduled for the following day. Allegations of unprofessional conduct and creating a hostile work environment. Classic projection. Vivian was moving faster than he'd anticipated. But Marcus wasn't walking into the boardroom unprepared. The manila folder under his arm contained more than just his own documentation. CEO Richard Hargrove looked up from his tablet. "Marcus, this is a closed executive meeting." "I apologize for the interruption," Marcus said calmly, "but this concerns everyone in this room." Vivian's face remained impassive, but her knuckles whitened around her pen. "Marcus is scheduled for a performance review tomorrow. Whatever this is can wait until then." "Actually, it can't." Marcus placed the folder on the table. "This contains evidence of systematic harassment and abuse of power by Director Porter against multiple employees, including myself." The room erupted in murmurs. Vivian laughed, the sound brittle. "This is absurd. He's been underperforming for months and trying to build excuses." "I have recordings," Marcus continued steadily. "Emails, witness statements from current and former employees, and documentation from 3 previous companies where similar patterns occurred before complaints were quietly settled." He nodded toward the doorway, where Elena from HR now stood with Rachel, Michael, and Taryn. "We're not here to negotiate settlements or transfers. We're here because this company has values it claims to uphold, and we believe the board should have all the facts." What followed was 2 hours of testimony that left the board visibly shaken. Alex's investigative work had uncovered 7 former employees from Vivian's previous companies willing to go on record. Elena presented data showing the suspicious pattern of transfers and departures since Vivian's arrival. Throughout it all, Vivian's defense shifted from denial to deflection to, finally, thinly veiled threats about the company's reputation if this witch hunt continued. When she suggested Marcus had orchestrated the campaign because she had rejected his advances, Rachel stood up. "That's enough," Rachel said, her voice trembling but determined. "I've been silent through 2 decades of watching women fight to be taken seriously in finance. I won't let you weaponize that struggle to cover your abuses. This isn't about gender. It's about power and how you've chosen to use it." As the meeting concluded, the board requested time to review the evidence. Marcus and the others were asked to wait outside. "They'll bury it," Michael muttered pessimistically. "Too much potential for bad publicity." "Maybe not," Elena said. 2 board members pulled me aside. They'd heard rumors but never had enough to act on. The waiting seemed endless. When they were finally called back in, Marcus noted that Vivian's chair was empty. Richard Hargrove looked grave. "Director Porter has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. We've engaged an external firm to ensure impartiality." He paused. "I want to personally apologize that this situation was allowed to develop. We failed you. As an organization, it wasn't a complete victory. Investigations could be manipulated, findings watered down. But it was a start." As they left the boardroom, Marcus received a text from Alex. "Story ready when you give the word, complete with on-record sources from all 3 previous companies. It was their insurance policy. If Helix tried to sweep this under the rug, the story would break." Marcus had made sure of that. That night, for the first time in weeks, Marcus slept soundly. The battle wasn't over, but finally the silence was. The investigation stretched into its 3rd week. Helix Financial had hired Barnett & Associates, a respected external firm specializing in workplace misconduct cases. Their thoroughness surprised Marcus. Perhaps the board was taking this more seriously than he'd dared hope. Or perhaps it was the letter from Alex's editor that had arrived the day after the boardroom confrontation, inquiring about Vivian Porter's employment history for an upcoming feature on corporate accountability. Marcus had been temporarily reassigned to another department to ensure the integrity of the investigation, according to HR. Most days, he could almost convince himself that things were proceeding as they should, but occasionally, he'd catch whispers in the break room or notice conversations that stopped when he approached. "They're calling you a troublemaker," Rachel informed him over lunch. "And worse." "Expected," Marcus replied, though the words stung more than he cared to admit. "The old guard thinks you should have handled it privately," she continued, making air quotes. "As if that ever works." Marcus nodded. The backlash was predictable. Challenges to power structures rarely came without consequences. That afternoon, Elena called him into a conference room where a woman in a charcoal suit introduced herself as Sandra Barnett, lead investigator. "Mr. Adams, we're nearing completion of our investigation," she began. "But there's been a development." Marcus tensed. "Ms. Porter has made a counter-allegation. She claims you orchestrated this campaign because she discovered financial irregularities in your reports and was planning to expose them." "That's absurd," Marcus said, his mind racing. "All my work is transparent and verified by—" "We know," Sandra interrupted. "We've reviewed everything. Her claims don't hold up. But she's also offered to withdraw her complaint if all parties agree to confidential severance agreements and non-disclosure terms." Marcus understood immediately. A golden parachute. She walks away with her reputation intact, and we're silenced forever. The board is considering it as an option that would minimize disruption. And if we refuse, Sandra's expression was carefully neutral. She's threatened a countersuit alleging defamation and a hostile work environment based on gender discrimination. Marcus felt a cold anger settle over him. This was why predators like Vivian thrived. Systems designed to prioritize institutional preservation over justice. "I need to discuss this with the others," he said finally. That evening, They gathered at Marcus's apartment. Not just the original 4, but 7 others who had come forward during the investigation. They want us to sign NDAs and walk away, Marcus explained. So she gets paid to leave and no one ever knows what she did? Taryn shook her head in disgust. How many companies will she do this at before someone stops her? The board is scared of a messy legal battle, Rachel pointed out. And some of us can't afford to be caught in one either. The room fell silent as each person weighed personal risk against principle. Finally, Marcus spoke. I understand if any of you need to accept the settlement, but I can't. Not after everything. He looked around the room. This was never just about our jobs. It was about changing a system that protects people who abuse their power. Michael, who had been quiet until now, cleared his throat. My daughter is starting her first corporate job next month. What do I tell her when she faces something like this if I walk away now? One by one, each person spoke. By midnight, they had reached a difficult consensus. They would stand together and reject the settlement offer. The next morning, Marcus delivered their collective response to the board. The message was simple. No NDAs, no confidential settlements. Complete transparency about the investigation's findings, whatever they might be. What he didn't expect was the email waiting in his inbox when he returned to his desk, from CEO Richard Hargrove himself, requesting a private meeting that afternoon. Marcus rode the elevator to the executive floor. He prepared himself for pressure tactics, perhaps even threats. What he couldn't prepare for was what Richard actually said when the office door closed behind them. My sister experienced something similar 20 years ago, Richard began quietly. She left the industry because of it. Never came back. Marcus remained silent, uncertain where this was heading. The board is divided, Richard continued. Half want to settle quietly. Standard corporate playbook. The other half? He paused. The other half have daughters, sisters, sons who might one day face what you and your colleagues have faced. Richard slid a document across the desk. This is what we're proposing instead. The announcement came on a Tuesday morning, delivered via company-wide email and simultaneous press release. Helix Financial had terminated Vivian Porter's employment following a comprehensive external investigation that substantiated multiple claims of harassment and abuse of power, but Helix didn't stop there. The press release outlined new corporate policies on harassment reporting, including an anonymous ethics hotline managed by a third party. The company announced mandatory leadership training focused on power dynamics and accountability. Most significantly, Helix committed to transparency, publishing an annual report on workplace complaints and their resolutions, with appropriate privacy protections for individuals involved. The financial press buzzed with the story. While some analysts questioned the wisdom of such public self-examination, others praised Helix for taking a bold stance in an industry not known for its progressive workplace policies. For Marcus and his colleagues, the victory felt surreal. There had been no NDAs, no hushed settlements. The truth had been acknowledged publicly. I still can't believe they went for it, Rachel said, joining Marcus by the window overlooking the city. 1 month had passed since the announcement. Companies never do this. Richard was the deciding factor, Marcus replied. Sometimes people surprise you. Not everyone had stayed. 2 of their group had accepted transfers to other branches. The spotlight had been too uncomfortable, but most remained, cautiously, optimistic about the cultural shift beginning to take root. Marcus had been appointed to a newly formed ethics advisory committee, along with Elena from HR and representatives from various departments. Their first task, reviewing the company's power structures and reporting mechanisms to identify vulnerabilities that had allowed Vivian's behavior to flourish unchecked. As fall turned to winter, Marcus received a message from Alex, his journalist friend. Thought you'd want to see this. The attached link led to a job posting for a director position at a competing financial firm. The qualifications matched Vivian's resume perfectly. At the bottom of the listing, background checks and professional reference verification required. 3 days later, the posting was removed. Word was spreading through the industry's informal networks. No dramatic headlines or public shaming, just quiet, factual information being shared when needed. Vivian Porter would find it difficult to secure another position where she could exploit power imbalances. On the one-year anniversary of the board meeting where they had first presented their evidence, Helix hosted a panel discussion on workplace ethics and accountability. Marcus found himself on stage alongside Richard, Elena, and Sandra Barnett, whose firm now provided regular training to Helix employees. The easiest path is rarely the right one, Marcus told the assembled staff when asked what he had learned. Speaking truth to power comes with risks, but silence carries its own cost, not just to individuals but to organizations that lose talent, innovation, and integrity when abuses go unchallenged. After the panel, a young analyst approached Marcus as he gathered his notes. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said quietly. "I faced something similar at my last job. I left because I didn't know what else to do. Seeing what happened here, it matters." That evening, Marcus stood on his apartment balcony, watching the city lights flicker to life as dusk descended. His phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Turn on Channel 8 News." The segment was brief but impactful. 3 former employees at a prominent tech company had come forward with allegations against their VP of operations, citing Helix Financial's example as inspiration. Marcus smiled. Change happened slowly, then all at once. He thought back to that first day in Vivian's office when she had slid the negative review across her desk. He had felt so alone then, so powerless. But power wasn't just about position or authority. Sometimes power came from simply refusing to be silenced, from standing firm in the face of intimidation, from finding allies in unexpected places. The story wouldn't make headlines forever. Other news would take its place. But somewhere, someone watching would find the courage to speak up when faced with their own Vivian Porter. And someone else would stand beside them when they did. That, Marcus decided as he watched the lights of the city shine against the darkening sky, was victory enough.